Sarah stood in the cold mountain air, shivering in her thin sweater, looking at Jake's confused and hopeful face. The ring box glittered in his hand, and she knew that whatever she said next would change all of their lives forever. "Jake, I can't marry you," she said quietly. "What?" Jake's face crumpled. "Why, I thought everything was going well between us." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, trying to find the courage to continue. "It's not about us exactly. It's about me. I've changed since the accident." "Changed how?" Jake stepped closer, his voice desperate. "Whatever it is, we can work through it together." "No, we can't," Sarah said, fresh tears starting. "Jake, I don't love you the way you deserve to be loved anymore." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He stumbled backwards, still clutching the ring box. "I don't understand. You nearly died, and I realized how much I love you. Why would that make you love me less?" Sarah closed her eyes, knowing she couldn't tell him the whole truth, but needing to say enough to make him understand it was really over. "The accident changed my perspective on everything. What I want, who I am, what makes me happy. I'm not the same person you fell in love with." "But people change together," Jake protested. "That's what love is about. Growing and changing together." "Not this kind of change," Sarah said sadly. "Jake, you're a wonderful man. You deserve someone who loves you completely without reservation. I can't be that person anymore." Jake stood there for a long moment staring at her. "Is there someone else?" he asked quietly. Sarah's heart nearly stopped. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you've been different for weeks, distant, like your heart was somewhere else. I kept telling myself it was because of the accident, but maybe I was wrong." Sarah wanted to lie, but she was tired of lying. "Yes," she whispered. "There is someone else." Jake's face went white. "Who?" "Someone I can't be with," Sarah said quickly. "Someone I should never have met." "Jake, this isn't about you not being enough. You're amazing. This is about me making a terrible mistake." "I want to know who it is," Jake said, his voice hard. "It doesn't matter," Sarah replied. "It's over. It has to be over." "It matters to me," Jake shouted, his hurt turning to anger. "I've been planning to propose for weeks. I bought this ring a month ago. I've been telling everyone how much I love you, and you've been sneaking around with someone else." Sarah flinched at his words. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "How long?" Jake demanded. "How long have you been seeing him?" "We're not seeing each other," Sarah said. "We only met a few times. For coffee, nothing. Nothing physical happened." "But you fell in love with him," Jake said bitterly. "Yes," Sarah admitted in a whisper. Jake threw the ring box across the parking lot, where it hit a tree and fell to the ground. "I can't believe this." 2 years, Sarah, 2 years of my life." "I know," Sarah said, crying harder now. "I know, and I'm so sorry." They drove back to the city in complete silence. Jake's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white, and Sarah stared out the window, knowing she had just destroyed the life of a good man who didn't deserve any of this. When they reached Sarah's apartment, Jake didn't get out of the car. "I'll send someone to get my things," he said without looking at her. "Jake," Sarah started. "Don't," he said sharply. "Just don't." Sarah went upstairs to her empty apartment and called in sick to work for the rest of the week. She couldn't face normal life when everything had fallen apart so completely. 3 days later, Dr. Harrison showed up at her door. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his face. "Jake called me," he said when she opened the door. "He said you broke up with him. He said there was someone else." Sarah let him in, and they sat on her couch with careful distance between them. "I couldn't marry him," Sarah said simply. "I couldn't pretend to love him when my heart belongs to someone else." "Did you tell him about us?" Dr. Harrison asked, fear in his voice. "No," Sarah replied. "I told him there was someone I couldn't be with." "He doesn't know it's you?" Dr. Harrison ran his hands through his hair. "He's devastated. He came to my house yesterday crying. He wants to know who the other man is. He thinks if he can confront him, he can win you back." "That's never going to happen," Sarah said quietly. "I know," Dr. Harrison replied, "but he doesn't understand why, and I can't explain it to him without destroying our relationship forever." They sat in silence for a while, both of them exhausted by the weight of their impossible situation. "What happens now?" Sarah asked eventually. "I don't know," Dr. Harrison admitted. "Jake is my son. He's the only family I have left. I can't lose him, and I can't be with someone knowing it would destroy the person I love," Sarah said. So where does that leave us? Dr. Harrison looked at her with eyes full of pain and love. I think it leaves us apart. Sarah nodded, even though the thought broke her heart. I know you're right, but knowing something and accepting it are two different things. I keep thinking about what you said in the park, Dr. Harrison said, about how this whole situation is insane. You were right. The odds of this happening, of us meeting this way and falling for each other without knowing who we were to each other, it's astronomical. Maybe that means something, Sarah suggested. Maybe we were meant to meet. Or maybe it means we were meant to learn that love isn't always enough, Dr. Harrison replied sadly. A week later, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She quit her job and moved to Seattle, where her sister lived. She couldn't stay in the same city as both Jake and Dr. Harrison, seeing reminders of them everywhere and wondering if she might run into one of them. Before she left, she wrote Dr. Harrison a letter that she never sent. In it, she told him that loving him had been both the most wonderful and most painful experience of her life. She thanked him for saving her life, even though she wasn't sure anymore if that had been a blessing or a curse. Dr. Harrison never knew about the letter, but he felt Sarah's absence in the city like a physical ache. He threw himself into his work even more than before, and slowly began to rebuild his relationship with Jake, who remained heartbroken and confused for months. Jake never found out who the other man was, though he hired a private investigator to try to track him down. The investigator found nothing because there was nothing to find. Sarah and Dr. Harrison had been careful to meet only in public places, and they had never been photographed together or seen by anyone who knew them both. A year later, Jake started dating someone new, a nurse from his father's hospital. Dr. Harrison was careful to stay professional around her, determined never to let anything like the Sarah situation happen again. And Sarah? She started over in Seattle, eventually finding work at a new marketing firm and slowly beginning to heal. She dated occasionally, but no one ever made her feel the way Dr. Harrison had. Sometimes she wondered if she had thrown away her chance at happiness with Jake for a love that was doomed from the start. But on quiet nights when she looked out at the Seattle skyline, she remembered the way Dr. Harrison had looked at her in those stolen moments at the coffee shop, and she knew that despite everything, she didn't regret falling in love with him. Some loves were meant to transform you, even if they couldn't last. Years passed, and the sharp pain of their separation faded into a gentle ache that Sarah carried with her always. She never tried to contact Dr. Harrison, and he never tried to find her. They had loved each other enough to let each other go, and sometimes, that's the most profound kind of love of all. The story of the woman who fell for the doctor who saved her life would always be their secret, a beautiful and tragic chapter that changed all three of their lives forever. The wedding ceremony was exactly as Dr. Malhotra had wanted it, efficient, dignified, and focused on appearances rather than celebration. Maya sat through the rituals in her heavy red lehenga, feeling like an actress playing a role she had never auditioned for. Arjun performed his part of the ceremony with the same clinical precision he probably used in his medical procedures, following each tradition correctly but without any warmth or genuine emotion. When the pandit pronounced them husband and wife, Arjun gave her a brief formal smile that didn't reach his eyes. Maya noticed that he seemed more engaged when greeting the prominent guests who had come to congratulate them than he had been during the actual wedding rituals. Several senior doctors from the city's medical community were present, and Arjun made sure to spend time discussing medical conferences and hospital politics with each of them. Dr. Malhotra is very focused on his career, Maya's new mother-in-law, Mrs. Malhotra said during the reception. He has big plans for expanding our hospital. Maya, you will need to understand that his work is very demanding. A doctor's wife must be supportive and never complain about the long hours. Maya nodded politely, though she wondered when anyone had asked her what she thought about being supportive or what her own needs might be. The assumption seemed to be that her role was already defined, and her job was simply to fit into it as smoothly as possible. The next morning, Maya found herself in the Malhotra family's large house in one of the city's most expensive neighborhoods. The house was impressive but felt cold and impersonal, decorated with expensive furniture that looked more like a showroom than a home. Her new room, their room, was spacious but dominated by Arjun's medical books, awards, and photographs from his time in America. I usually wake up at 5 in the morning, Arjun informed her as he prepared for his first day back at the hospital after the wedding. I prefer my breakfast to be ready by 5:30. Black coffee, 2 pieces of whole wheat toast and scrambled eggs with minimal oil. I don't like delays in my routine. Maya, who had never been an early riser, simply nodded. She watched him organize his day with military precision, checking his schedule on his phone, arranging his medical coat, and reviewing patient files while eating his breakfast. When she offered to help or tried to make conversation, he seemed irritated by the interruption. "I have a very important surgery today," he said without looking up from his papers. "I need to concentrate. We can talk about household matters later." The household matters, Maya soon discovered, involved a long list of expectations that Mrs. Malhotra presented to her that same morning. Maya was expected to oversee the household staff, manage the monthly budget for domestic expenses, ensure that Arjun's meals were prepared according to his preferences, maintain the social calendar for medical community events, and be available to accompany Arjun to hospital functions as needed. Dr. Arjun is not just any doctor, Mrs. Malhotra explained with obvious pride. He is being considered for the position of chief of cardiology at the city's largest private hospital. His reputation is everything. As his wife, you represent our family's status in the medical community. You must always present yourself properly and never do anything that might reflect poorly on his position. Maya felt the weight of these expectations settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Her own interests, her half-finished master's degree, her love of reading and writing, none of these seemed to matter in her new life. When she mentioned to Mrs. Malhotra that she had been studying literature and had hoped to perhaps teach someday, her mother-in-law looked genuinely puzzled. "But why would you need to work?" "Dr. Arjun earns very well. Working wives can be problematic for doctors. Patients and colleagues might think he cannot provide for his family properly. It's better to focus on supporting his career." The days settled into a routine that felt more like a job than a marriage. Maya woke early to ensure Arjun's breakfast was perfect, spent her mornings managing household tasks she had never needed to think about before, and her afternoons waiting for Arjun to return home with updates about his day that he rarely shared. Evenings were often interrupted by emergency calls from the hospital, and weekends frequently involved medical conferences or social obligations with other doctors' families. During these social gatherings, Maya observed how other doctors' wives behaved. They seemed well practiced in discussing their husbands' achievements, comparing notes on managing medical professionals' demanding schedules, and maintaining conversations that never strayed into controversial or too personal territory. Maya felt like she was learning to speak a new language, one where her individual thoughts and opinions were less important than her ability to reflect well on her husband's reputation. Arjun himself remained a mystery to her. At home he was polite but distant, treating her more like a competent assistant than a wife. He praised her when she managed household tasks efficiently and became irritated when anything in his routine was disrupted. He never asked about her day, her thoughts, or her feelings about their new life together. When Maya tried to initiate conversations about topics outside of medicine or household management, he would listen with obvious impatience before steering the discussion back to more practical matters. "I don't understand why you spend so much time reading novels," he said one evening when he found her with a book. "Wouldn't your time be better spent learning about nutrition or health management? It would be more useful for supporting my practice." Maya began to feel like she was slowly disappearing. The person she had been before marriage, someone who loved literature, who had dreams of teaching, who enjoyed deep conversations with friends about ideas and feelings, seemed to be fading away. In her place was emerging someone whose value was measured entirely by her efficiency in supporting someone else's ambitions. Her phone calls with Kavya became her only connection to her former self. But even these conversations were difficult because she had to be careful about when she made them, ensuring that Arjun wasn't around to overhear what he might consider complaints about their marriage. "How are you really doing, Maya?" Kavya asked during one of these secret phone calls. "I'm fine," Maya replied automatically, then paused. "Actually, I don't know how I'm doing. I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Everything is about his career, his reputation, his needs. I don't even know what my own needs are anymore." "Maya, that doesn't sound healthy. Marriage should be a partnership, not a one-person show." "But maybe this is just how marriage works," Maya said, voicing a fear that had been growing in her mind. "Maybe I had unrealistic expectations about love and companionship. Maybe this is what real adult life looks like." 3 months into the marriage, Maya realized that she and Arjun were still essentially strangers living in the same house. She knew his schedule, his food preferences, and his professional goals, but she knew nothing about his fears, his dreams beyond medicine, or what made him laugh. More troubling, he seemed to have no interest in knowing these things about her either. 6 months into their marriage, Maya began to notice small cracks in Arjun's carefully maintained facade. The first sign came during a particularly busy week at the hospital, when he returned home later than usual for 3 consecutive nights. On the third night, she heard him on the phone in his study, and his voice sounded different, strained and worried in a way she had never heard before. "I understand the family's concerns, but we did everything we could," he was saying. "Sometimes complications arise that no one can predict. I've been practicing for 8 years and I've never lost a patient during such a routine procedure." Maya paused outside the study door, not meaning to eavesdrop but unable to ignore the vulnerability in his voice. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his usual composed expression was back in place, but she had caught a glimpse of something more human underneath. "Is everything all right?" she asked gently. Arjun looked surprised by her question, as if he had forgotten she was there. "Just hospital matters. Nothing you need to concern yourself with." But Maya had seen the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged when he thought no one was looking. For the first time since their marriage, she felt a flicker of curiosity about who her husband really was beneath his professional armor. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later when Maya woke up in the middle of the night to find Arjun sitting by the window in their bedroom, staring out at the city lights. He wasn't reading medical journals or checking his phone as he usually did during his insomnia episodes. He was just sitting quietly, lost in thought. "Can't sleep?" Maya asked softly. Arjun startled, as if he had forgotten she was there. "I didn't mean to wake you. I'll go to the guest room." "You don't have to," Maya said, surprising herself with her boldness. "Is it about work?" For a moment, Arjun looked like he might retreat behind his usual wall of polite dismissal. But something in Maya's tone, perhaps the genuine concern rather than mere politeness, seemed to crack something inside him. "I lost a patient today," he said quietly. "A young mother. The surgery should have been routine, but there were complications. Her husband brought their 5-year-old daughter to say goodbye." Maya felt her heart contract with sympathy. She had never heard Arjun speak about his work with such raw emotion. "I'm sorry. That must have been terrible. People think doctors get used to it," Arjun continued, still staring out the window. "They expect us to be machines. Efficient, unemotional, always successful. But every loss feels like a personal failure. Every family that trusts you with their loved one's life, the weight of that responsibility never gets easier." Maya moved to sit in the chair across from him, maintaining a respectful distance but showing that she was listening. "Do you want to talk about it?" Arjun looked at her with something like surprise, as if the idea of sharing his emotional burden with his wife was a foreign concept. "You wouldn't understand. It's medical stuff. Try me," Maya said. "I may not know about medicine, but I understand about feeling responsible for things beyond your control." Something in her voice must have resonated with him because Arjun began to talk. He told her about the patient, about the unexpected complications, about the family's grief and his own sense of helplessness. As he spoke, Maya saw a completely different person emerge. Not the arrogant, self-assured doctor she had married, but a man carrying an enormous emotional burden with no one to share it with. "My parents expect me to be perfect," Arjun said after a long pause. "They've invested everything in my career. The family reputation, the hospital's success, even this marriage. It's all tied to my professional achievements. Sometimes I feel like I'm not a person anymore, just a collection of expectations and accomplishments." Maya felt a shock of recognition. "I understand that feeling more than you might think. Do you?" Arjun looked at her directly for perhaps the first time since their wedding day. "I feel like I've disappeared since we got married," Maya admitted. "Like my only purpose is to support your success and maintain your reputation. I had dreams too, but they don't seem to matter anymore." They sat in silence for a while, both processing this unexpected moment of honesty. Maya realized that they had both been trapped in roles that didn't allow for vulnerability or authentic connection. "I didn't know you felt that way," Arjun said finally. "About disappearing, I mean." "We've never really talked about anything personal," Maya pointed out gently. I know your coffee preferences and your schedule, but I don't know what you're afraid of or what makes you happy. Arjun considered this. I don't remember the last time someone asked me what makes me happy. Over the following weeks, these late-night conversations became a regular occurrence. Maya learned that Arjun had always felt pressure to be the perfect son, the perfect student, the perfect doctor. His parents had sacrificed enormously to fund his medical education, taking loans and selling family jewelry to send him to America for his specialization. The weight of their expectations had shaped every decision he had made since childhood. I love medicine, he told her one night. I genuinely want to help people. But sometimes I feel like I'm performing my life instead of living it. Everyone sees Dr. Arjun Malhotra, the successful cardiologist, but I've forgotten who Arjun actually is underneath all of that. Maya shared her own feelings about the forced marriage, her abandoned dreams of teaching, and her struggle to maintain her identity in their current arrangement. She was surprised to discover that Arjun was genuinely interested in her thoughts about literature and education. I never asked about your interests because I assumed you wouldn't want to discuss them, he admitted. My mother always said that working wives create problems for doctors, so I thought you'd be happier, focusing on domestic matters. Did you ever ask me what would make me happy? Maya asked. Arjun was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. I didn't, I'm sorry. This acknowledgement felt like a small miracle to Maya. For the first time since their marriage, she felt seen as an individual rather than just a role in someone else's life. Their relationship began to shift in subtle ways. Arjun started asking about her day and actually listening to her answers. Maya began to understand the pressures he faced at the hospital and offered emotional support rather than just practical assistance. They discovered they both enjoyed discussing books, though Arjun's reading had been limited to medical journals for years. I used to love reading fiction when I was younger, he confessed. Before medical school consumed everything. I particularly enjoyed detective novels, Maya smiled. I have some good recommendations if you're interested. But even as their connection deepened, Maya sensed that Arjun was still holding something back. There were phone calls he took in private, documents he kept locked in his study, and moments when she caught him looking worried about something beyond his usual hospital concerns. She didn't push, sensing that trust was still fragile between them. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there were still significant secrets in her husband's life. The partial revelation of Arjun's humanity had given Maya hope that their marriage might become something real and meaningful. She began to believe that underneath his arrogant exterior was a person she could genuinely care about. But she had no idea that fate was preparing to reveal truths that would challenge everything she thought she knew about the man she had married. The crisis that would change everything began with a phone call on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Maya was preparing Arjun's breakfast when she heard his phone ringing from the bathroom where he was getting ready for work. The caller seemed persistent, ringing back immediately each time the call went to voicemail. Can you check who's calling? Arjun called out. If it's the hospital, tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes. Maya glanced at the phone and saw a name she didn't recognize. Dr. Sarah Chen. The call came again almost immediately. Something about the persistence made Maya feel uneasy, but she simply called back to Arjun that it wasn't the hospital. When Arjun emerged from the bathroom and saw the missed calls, his face went pale. He quickly grabbed his phone and stepped into his study, closing the door behind him. Maya could hear his voice through the thin walls, but not the words. What she could hear was the tone, urgent, worried, and very different from his usual professional manner. When he came out 15 minutes later, he looked shaken. I have to go to Mumbai today, he announced abruptly. There's an emergency conference I need to attend. Today? But you have surgery scheduled, Maya said, confused. Arjun never changed his surgical schedule lightly. I'll reschedule them. It's very important. I might be gone for a few days. Maya watched him pack hastily, throwing clothes into a suitcase without his usual methodical precision. He seemed distracted and kept checking his phone every few minutes. When she offered to help or asked if everything was all right, he gave her vague answers and avoided eye contact. Is this about a patient? She asked as he prepared to leave. Something like that, he replied, but his tone suggested it was anything but routine medical business. After Arjun left, Maya found herself alone with a growing sense of unease. In the months since they had begun talking more openly, Arjun had become more transparent about his work stress and hospital politics. This sudden secrecy felt like a return to the early days of their marriage, when she had felt shut out of his life entirely. That evening, Mrs. Malhotra called to ask where Arjun was, since he hadn't shown up for their weekly family dinner. Maya explained about the emergency conference in Mumbai, but she could hear the confusion in her mother-in-law's voice. Mumbai? But the Medical Association conference isn't until next month, and why wouldn't he tell me about an emergency meeting? Maya had no answers, and her unease deepened into genuine worry. She tried calling Arjun, but his phone went straight to voicemail. When she texted him, his responses were brief and evasive. The next day, Maya received a call that would shatter her understanding of her husband's life. The caller was Dr. Pradeep Sharma, a colleague of Arjun's from the hospital. "Mrs. Malhotra, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm trying to reach Arjun. He was supposed to assist me in a surgery today, but he hasn't shown up and isn't answering his phone. The hospital administration is asking questions. He's in Mumbai for a conference," Maya explained. There was a pause. "Mumbai, are you sure? Because I just spoke to Dr. Gupta from Mumbai Medical College, and he said there are no cardiology conferences happening there this week." Maya felt her stomach drop. Maybe it's a private hospital conference. "Mrs. Malhotra, I don't want to alarm you, but this isn't like Arjun at all. He's never missed a scheduled surgery without proper notice. Is everything all right at home?" After hanging up, Maya sat in the empty house feeling completely lost. Her husband had lied to her about where he was going and why. The trust they had been building over the past few months suddenly felt fragile and uncertain. That afternoon, Maya made a decision that would have been unthinkable to her 6 months earlier. She went to Arjun's study and began looking through his papers, searching for any clue about what might have prompted his sudden departure. She felt guilty about invading his privacy, but her worry overrode her guilt. Hidden in a locked drawer that she managed to open with a hairpin, Maya found documents that made no sense to her. There were legal papers from a law firm in Delhi, correspondence with someone named David Martinez in New York, and what appeared to be immigration documents. Most puzzling of all was a folder marked Sarah Chen, Medical License Review. Maya's hands trembled as she realized that the persistent caller from that morning was connected to whatever had sent Arjun fleeing to Mumbai. She photographed the documents with her phone, not sure what else to do with the information. That evening, Maya called Kavya, her voice shaking as she explained the situation. "Maya, this sounds serious," Kavya said. "People don't lie about business trips and disappear unless something major is happening. Have you considered that he might be in some kind of legal trouble?" "Legal trouble? But he's a doctor. What kind of legal trouble could he be in?" "I don't know, but those immigration documents you found suggest this might be connected to his time in America. Maybe you should contact that Dr. Sarah Chen directly." Maya spent a sleepless night debating whether to make that call. Part of her felt that she should wait for Arjun to return and explain himself, but the larger part of her realized that their marriage would never survive if they returned to the pattern of secrets and evasion. The next morning, Maya gathered her courage and dialed the number for Dr. Sarah Chen. The woman who answered had an American accent and sounded surprised to hear from Maya. "Mrs. Malhotra? Arjun's wife? I wasn't sure he was married." This statement hit Maya like a physical blow. "You weren't sure he was married? But we've been married for almost a year now." "I'm sorry, this is very awkward," Dr. Chen said. "I'm calling about a very serious matter regarding Dr. Malhotra's medical license and some allegations that have been made about his conduct during his residency in New York. I've been trying to reach him because there's going to be a formal investigation, and he needs legal representation." "What kind of allegations?" Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Dr. Chen hesitated. "I probably shouldn't discuss this with you directly, but since you're his wife, there are questions about falsified research data in a study he published 2 years ago. A former colleague has come forward with evidence that some of the patient outcomes in his cardiac surgery study were misrepresented. If the allegations are proven true, it could affect his license to practice medicine internationally." Maya felt the room spinning around her. "Are you saying my husband might have committed fraud?" "I'm saying there are serious allegations that need to be investigated. The reason I've been trying to reach him is that he has a chance to defend himself and provide his side of the story." but he needs to respond to the medical board within the next week or his license could be suspended, pending a full investigation. After ending the call, Maya sat in stunned silence. The man she had married, the successful and respected doctor that her family had been so proud to have in their family, might be a fraud. The arrogance she had attributed to professional confidence might have been covering up something much darker, but even more shocking than the potential fraud was the realization that Arjun had been facing this crisis alone. Instead of trusting her with the truth, he had chosen to run away and leave her in the dark. All their late-night conversations and growing intimacy seemed meaningless in the face of this enormous deception. Maya realized that she had no idea who she had really married, and that whatever fate had in store for them was going to be far more complicated than either of them had imagined. Arjun returned from Mumbai 3 days later, looking haggard and defeated in a way Maya had never seen before. His usual impeccable appearance was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes had dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. When he walked through the front door, he seemed surprised to find Maya waiting for him in the living room, as if he had forgotten he had a wife to come home to. "We need to talk," Maya said simply, her voice steadier than she felt. Arjun nodded without meeting her eyes. "Let me just shower and change first." "No," Maya said firmly. "We talk now. I know about Dr. Sarah Chen. I know about the medical license investigation. I know you lied about where you were going and why." Arjun's face went completely white. He sank into the nearest chair, suddenly looking much older than his 31 years. "How do you know about that?" "Dr. Chen called me. She thought it was strange that you hadn't mentioned being married, which was interesting since we've been married for almost a year. Then Dr. Sharma from your hospital called looking for you because you missed a surgery. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Arjun buried his face in his hands. "I never wanted you to know. I thought I could handle it quietly, make it go away before it affected our lives." "Our lives." Maya's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "How is lying to your wife and disappearing for days handling our lives? How is letting me find out about serious allegations against you from a stranger handling our lives?" "You don't understand," Arjun said desperately. "If this gets out, it will destroy everything. My career, my family's reputation, the hospital. Everything we've built will be gone. I thought if I could just explain to the medical board in person, provide more context." "What context?" Maya demanded. "Did you falsify research data or didn't you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Arjun's shoulders shook and Maya realized he was crying. In all their months of marriage, through all their late-night conversations about his pressures and fears, she had never seen him cry. "I was so desperate to succeed," he whispered finally. "The pressure from my family, the debt from my education, the expectations that I would be this brilliant success story. When my research results weren't as strong as they needed to be for publication, I adjusted some of the numbers. Just slightly. I told myself it didn't matter because the basic conclusions were still valid." Maya felt a cold emptiness spreading through her chest. "You lied in a medical study? About patient outcomes?" "The patients were all fine," Arjun said quickly. "I didn't hurt anyone. I just made the success rates look better than they actually were. But the publication got me the fellowship that led to my specialization, and the specialization got me the position here. Everything good in my life came from that one decision." "Everything good in your life," Maya repeated flatly, "including marrying me." Arjun looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. "Maya, no, that's not what I meant." "Isn't it, though?" Maya stood up, pacing to the window as the full scope of her situation became clear. "Your family chose me as your wife because you were a successful, respected doctor. My family agreed to the marriage because of your reputation and status. None of this would have happened if people knew the truth about who you really are." "I am still a good doctor," Arjun said desperately. "That one mistake doesn't erase years of helping patients, of working hard. One mistake." Maya turned to face him. "Arjun, you built your entire career on a lie. You've been living as someone you're not for years, and now you've dragged me into it without even giving me the choice to know what I was getting into. I never meant for you to be hurt by this, but I am hurt by it. Do you understand that? I'm married to someone who doesn't exist. The successful Dr. Arjun Malhotra that everyone respects is a fraud. And the real Arjun, whoever that is, has been lying to me from the day we met." They sat in painful silence for several minutes. Maya could hear the sound of traffic outside. the normal sounds of life continuing while her world fell apart. Finally, Arjun spoke again. I met with lawyers in Mumbai. There might be a way to fight this, to argue that the allegations are exaggerated, but it would be expensive and there's no guarantee. If I lose, I could lose my license to practice medicine anywhere. What happens then? Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. I don't know. I've never thought about doing anything else. Medicine is all I've ever known. Without it, I'm nothing. You're not nothing, Maya said, surprising herself. Despite her anger and hurt, she felt a flicker of compassion for the broken man in front of her. But you are lost. You've been pretending to be someone else for so long that you don't know who you really are anymore. Do you hate me? Arjun asked quietly. Maya considered the question seriously. I don't know what I feel about you. I'm angry, yes. I feel betrayed and deceived. But I also feel sorry for you. You've been carrying this secret alone for years and it's been destroying you. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry for all of this. You deserved better than being married to someone like me. Maybe I did deserve better, Maya agreed. But here we are. The question is, what do we do now? Arjun looked at her with something like hope. What do you mean? I mean, we have choices to make. You can keep running from this and lying about it, or you can face it honestly. We can keep pretending we have a marriage based on false foundations, or we can figure out if there's anything real between us worth fighting for. You would stay with me? Even knowing all this? Maya was quiet for a long moment. I don't know yet, but I know that I can't make any real decisions based on lies. If we're going to have any chance of making this work, I need to know everything. No more secrets, no more protected information. I need to know who you really are, not who you've been pretending to be. Arjun nodded slowly. It would mean giving up the life we have now. The house, the status, the respect. If I lose my license, we'll have to start over with nothing. Maybe starting over with nothing would be better than continuing to build on lies, Maya said. At least then we'd know what's real. That night, Arjun began to tell Maya everything. About the pressure he had felt since childhood to be perfect. About the moment he had made the decision to falsify the data. About the years of anxiety and guilt that had followed. He told her about the panic attacks he had been having since Dr. Chen first contacted him. About the nightmares where his fraud was exposed in front of all his colleagues and patients. As Maya listened, she began to understand that the arrogant, controlling man she had married was largely a construction designed to hide a deeply insecure and frightened person. She also began to realize that fate had perhaps brought them together, not for the reasons either of their families had imagined, but because they were both people who had lost themselves in trying to meet other people's expectations. For the first time since their marriage began, they were having completely honest conversations. It was painful and frightening, but it was also real in a way their relationship had never been before. Maya began to see glimpses of who Arjun might be if he stopped trying to be the person everyone expected him to be. What fate had in store for them, Maya realized, was not the comfortable, prestigious life everyone had assumed they would have. Instead, fate was offering them something much more uncertain but potentially more valuable, like the chance to discover who they really were and whether they could love each other as real people rather than as roles they had been assigned to play. Maya had always dreamed of choosing her own path in life, but at 23, she found herself sitting in her family's modest living room, listening to her parents discuss her future as if she were not even there. The conversation centered around Dr. Arjun Malhotra, a successful cardiologist from the city, who had recently returned from America after completing his specialization. He has agreed to the marriage, her father announced with obvious relief in his voice. The Malhotra family has accepted our proposal. This is a blessing for our family, Maya. Dr. Malhotra earns more in a month than I make in a year at the government office. Maya's mother nodded enthusiastically, her eyes bright with dreams of elevated social status. Just think, Beta, you will be the wife of a doctor. People will respect you. The Malhotra family owns that big hospital in the city center. You will never want for anything. Maya stared at the faded patterns on the old carpet beneath her feet. She had met Dr. Arjun Malhotra exactly once 3 weeks ago, when both families had gathered for the traditional meeting. He had barely looked at her during the entire visit, spending most of his time talking about his successful practice in New York and his plans to expand the family hospital. When he did address her directly, It was only to ask if she could manage a household efficiently and whether she understood the responsibilities of being a doctor's wife. "But Papa, I don't even know him properly," Maya said quietly, finally finding her voice. "And I had hoped to finish my master's degree first. You promised I could complete my education." Her father's expression hardened. "Education is good, Beta, but marriage is more important for a girl. You are already 23. If we wait longer, good proposals will stop coming. Dr. Malhotra is educated, well-settled, and from a good family. What more could you want?" "I want to choose for myself," Maya replied, her voice stronger now. "I want to know the person I'm going to spend my life with. I want to love someone and be loved in return." Her mother made a dismissive sound. "Love, these are ideas from movies and books. Real life is different. Respect and understanding come with time. Your father and I learned to care for each other after marriage. Dr. Malhotra is a good match. He will provide for you well." Maya felt the walls of the small room closing in around her. She thought about her friend Priya, who had married for love last year and seemed genuinely happy with her husband. She thought about her cousin Neha, who had been forced into a similar arrangement and now rarely smiled when she visited with her in-laws. The two different paths seemed to represent her only options, and she was being pushed toward the one that terrified her. "The wedding is set for next month," her father continued, as if the matter was already decided. "The Malhotra family wants a simple ceremony because Dr. Malhotra has to return to his practice quickly. They have suggested we keep the guest list small and focus on the essentials." "Next month?" Maya's voice came out as barely a whisper. "But that's so soon. I need time to think about this." "There is nothing to think about," her mother said firmly. "The decision has been made. You should be grateful that such a prestigious family has agreed to this alliance. Do you know how many girls would dream of this opportunity?" Maya excused herself and went to her small bedroom, closing the door behind her. She sat on her narrow bed and looked around at the space that had been her sanctuary for so many years. The walls were covered with her certificates from college. Her books were neatly arranged on a small shelf, and her modest dreams seemed to mock her from every corner. She picked up her phone and called her best friend Kavya, who lived in another city where she worked as a software engineer. Kavya had always been the stronger one, the one who had fought her family's traditional expectations and carved out her own path. "They're forcing me to marry him." "Kavya?" Maya explained the situation in a voice thick with unshed tears. "I feel like I'm being sold to the highest bidder." "Have you tried talking to them seriously?" Kavya asked. "Maya, you have rights. You can refuse this marriage. You know how my family is. They've already given their word to the Malhotra family. If I refuse now, they'll never forgive me. My father will lose face in the community. They've started telling everyone about the engagement. But Maya, this is your life we're talking about. One conversation with this man isn't enough to decide if you want to spend your entire life with him. What if he's not a good person? What if you're completely incompatible?" Maya had been asking herself the same questions. During that one meeting, Dr. Arjun Malhotra had seemed cold and distant. He spoke about his success with a tone that suggested he expected to be admired. When her mother had mentioned Maya's interest in literature and her dream of perhaps teaching one day, he had smiled condescendingly and said that managing a doctor's household would be a full-time job that wouldn't leave time for such pursuits. "I don't know what to do. Kavya, I feel trapped." The next few weeks passed in a blur of shopping for wedding clothes, meeting with relatives who all praised her good fortune, and enduring well-meaning advice from married women about how to be a good wife. Maya went through the motions like someone in a dream, hoping that somehow things would change, that some miracle would give her the freedom to choose her own path. Dr. Malhotra visited twice more before the wedding, always accompanied by his mother. He spoke to Maya's parents about practical matters like the wedding arrangements and their future living situation, but barely acknowledged Maya herself. When she tried to ask him about his interests outside of medicine, he seemed surprised by the question and gave vague answers before changing the subject back to his professional achievements. Maya began to realize that she was not marrying a person so much as she was being transferred to a different family system, where her role would be clearly defined and her individual dreams would become secondary to her duties as a wife and daughter-in-law. The future that had once seemed full of possibilities now stretched ahead of her like a narrow corridor, with no room to turn around.